The name of Moshe appears, except in the Parsha of TeZaveh. Does not appear in Nitzavim either, but we always usually read Nitzavim and Vayelech together, so Moshe's name is there. In the Megillah, the Shem Hashem, there's no reference to God. In the whole Megillah of Esther, the only book of the 24 books of Torah, Nevi'im, Ksubim, that the name of Hashem doesn't appear. So we have here a parsha where Hashem's name is not, where Moshe's name is not present, and we have a book of the Tanakh where the name of Hashem is not present. There are many who have commented on this. It's not accidental, but there's a very strong message that is being sent to the Jewish people, and I think especially relevant to us in our situations. The name Moshe doesn't appear. That signifies that there will be generations in Jewish history where clear leadership is absent. The Tanakh itself describes such a period of time, a century, during the reign of the Shoftim. Ein melech b'Yisrael. There's no leader in the Jewish people. Ish hayosho be'eino v'yaseh. Everybody can do whatever they want to do. There's no direction given to the Jewish people. In such a situation, it is to despair. It's like we have lost our way. We're trying to get back on the road. We don't know where the road leads. We don't know what road to go on. So Moshe is absent. We don't have a Moshe. However, the Parsha of TeZaveh teaches us that even without Moshe, there is direction to the Jewish people. There is purpose. There are noble causes. And the Parsha details for us, for instance, the lighting of the menorah in the Mishkan. One of the great miraculous events, that the menorah never was extinguished. So the menorah represents Torah, and it represents the survival of the Jewish people. And it also represents a constant miracle. Since it is a constant miracle, people don't appreciate it to be a miracle. We always think of a miraculous event only in terms of its rare occurrence, the fact that it's not usual. But there are constant miracles. And the menorah was one of them. Now, the problem with a constant miracle is that since it's constant, we don't consider it to be miraculous anymore. So to speak, the fact that the menorah always is lit, we take it for granted. We don't see the miracle anymore. And we attribute it all to natural or social causes. The Torah teaches us that there was once a very poor scholar, poor in terms of wealth, and it came time Friday night to light the Shabbos candles, and they had no oil for the candle, and they had only vinegar, which is not flammable. And the scholar said to the woman, light the candles. She said, how can I do it? There's no oil. There's vinegar. And he answered her, Mi she'omar lashemen sheyadlik, u'yomar lachomet sheyadlik. The same one that tells us that oil is flammable can tell us that in this case, vinegar is also flammable. Meaning, we don't even think it's a miracle that oil burns. That's nature. Because it always happens. But if we thought about it, we would say a liquid allows fire to burn. Usually liquids extinguish fire. So that itself is a miracle. But it's a constant miracle. And therefore you're not impressed by it. You only are impressed, if at all, by rare miracles. So even though Moshe's name doesn't appear, the miraculous state of the Jewish people is present, because the menorah is lit. And the menorah is one of those constant miracles. I think that that's a metaphor for our times as well. We complain about our leadership, justly or unjustly. We complain about those who are supposed to be our spiritual guides. The natural tendency is to glorify the past and diminish the present. Oh, I remember when so-and-so was the leader. My experience in the rabbinate has been that one should never succeed a successful rabbi. Because no matter how successful the new rabbi will be, there will be those who say, I remember when. So even though Moshe is not present, so then they would say, they will in next week's Parsha, Moshe is the one who took us out of Egypt. What happened to him? There's no Moshe. How can we go on without Moshe? Moshe. The Torah tells us that we can go on very well without Moshe. And that's part of the reason that the Torah goes out of its way to prevent the unnecessary glorification of Moshe. That is implicit in the fact that his burial place is not noted. Can you imagine if we knew where Moshe Rabbeinu was buried? What a lag bomer he would have. It'd be a shrine. And the Rebbeinu Shalom said no. That Moshe gave us the Torah, but the survival of the Jewish people is not a personal matter. So even if Moshe's name doesn't appear, but there's a menorah, there's a Mishkan, there's a Jewish people. So one of the lessons is the survival without the leadership of Moshe. And that's the task in every generation, to somehow adjust to the fact that there are generations that do not have the leadership of Moshe. But that in no way should impair the survival and growth of the Jewish people. I think it's also part of the reason why Moshe's children do not occupy a place of honor after his death. The Torah wanted it not to be a personal religion. We're not dependent. So it says, Zichru Torah Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah of Moshe. But Moshe himself need not always be present. Then we have the Megillah, where the name of Hashem is not present. Which is even more startling. As that one of the signs of a person who wishes to be righteous is Shem Shamayim Shogar Al Piv, that he always speaks of the Lord, he speaks of heaven. And that's part of the Jewish society. God willing, God permitting, thank God. Shem Shemaim Shogar Apiv. Here you have a whole Megillah with what must be considered a national miracle, where the Jewish people are on the verge of extinction, and they are saved by events that are miraculous, but that are so unusual. Esther should become the queen. Mordechai should tell them about Bigsan Vaseresh. Haman should overplay his hand. Achashverosh should be such a volatile person. This all combined to make for us the miracle of Purim. The name of God is not there. You read the Megillah, it looks like, it looks like a history of Henry VIII. So what is that meant to teach us? Just that the absence of Moshe's name taught us a lesson in Parsha TeZaveh that we're not dependent upon any one person, no matter how great, and that there will be times that there is distinct lack of leadership in the Jewish world, but that the fact that there's a Mishkan and Torah will be sufficient to guide us through our problems. So now we have a national event, the salvation of the Jewish people through the most unlikely of sources, a combination of events that is beyond rationality. And the name of Hashem is not present. People will not see it. People will not appreciate it. And yet, this act of salvation is, according to the rabbis, the final affirmation of the acceptance of the Torah by the Jewish people. Kimu v'kiblu ayudim aleim v'alzarum. Now they really accepted the Torah. We live in a world where many people want to have a connection to Hashem, but without the Torah. I always mention the incident about Justice Brandeis, the first Jewish Supreme Court justice. So in his autobiography, he writes that he had an uncle, Louis Dembitz, who lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and was an observant Jew. And Brandeis oftentimes went to spend the weekend with his uncle. His uncle had no children. And he writes glowingly about the beauty of his uncle's Sabbath. And he adds at the end of his description, he said, I have always longed to experience such a Sabbath on my own, but without the restrictions. So even though he was a wise and accomplished person, he didn't seem to understand that without the restrictions, he's not going to have the glowing Sabbath that he wanted. The Gemara says in our posuk in that we read, "Lu tu Torasi Yozovu." So the Gemara says, "Halavai Torasi Yozovu." I'm sorry, I'm mixed it up. Lu Osi Yozovu Torasi Shamar. Would that the Jewish people forget about me, God says, but they would observe the Torah. The Gemara darshans Halavai, Osi Osva, forget about me. Observe the Torah. Many in the Jewish world have it backwards. They're always chasing God, but they don't want the Torah. And therefore, they rarely find him. The key to godliness is the Torah. So in the Megillah, Esther taught us that God will forget about God. He's not, these are all events. but that you have to accept the Torah. Kimu v'kiblu. You have to double down, so to speak, on your acceptance of the Torah. In so doing, you will eventually come to have the name of God in your midst as well. And that's been the emphasis throughout the Jewish ages. There were generations that attempted to climb the ladder to heaven. There were generations that only were interested, apparently, in scholarship. But the lesson is Torah Shamara. The key to everything is the Torah and the observance of the Torah. The key to the tranquility of Shabbat are the restrictions. And that's a very important lesson. And that's one of the many lessons, therefore, of the Megillah. God's name does not appear. The Jewish people are going to survive. It's going to be a miracle for generations. And it's without God's name. But it's with the Torah. It's with observance. It's with Jewish tradition. It's with the understanding that somehow this is the method by which survival can be achieved. Sometimes we are in a generation when both are present, and sometimes we are in a generation when both are absent. Generation that doesn't have a Moshe and doesn't see Hashem in the miracle of the Jewish survival, the land of Israel, the greatness of the Jewish people. They just don't see it. It's absent. But even in such a generation, we are held to an account because the eternal Torah accompanies us. It's with us. And with it, therefore, no matter how great the absence of Moshe is, or how painful the absence of God's name is, we have to persevere, and we have to be the eternal people, and we have to fulfill the mission that was given to us at Sinai and remains relevant to us until this very day. So this congruence of the Parsha of TeZaveh and the reading of the Megillah is something that we should take to heart, because this type of revelation, which is not present, nevertheless becomes the source of our success and survival. So next Friday is Purim, so there will not be a shiur, and but the Shabbos after Friday afterwards there will be. So stay well and thank you and have a happy Purim. Thank you.
Yeah.